She stood in the kitchen, staring at the security footage on her laptop. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. on the screen. She watched herself walk downstairs, open the refrigerator, and pour a glass of wine. But Elise didn't drink wine. She hadn't had alcohol in 3 years, not since her mother died of liver disease. And yet, there she was, clear as day, doing something she knew she didn't do. Her hands trembled as she checked the date. Last Tuesday, the same night her husband, Richard, had asked her, "Did you drink the Bordeaux I was saving?" She'd said no, but he insisted, almost laughed at the absurdity. He'd looked at her with those concerned eyes and said softly, "Elise, are you sure?" Now, watching herself on camera, she felt her reality fracture. Am I going crazy? This is the story of Elise Morrison, a successful architect, sharp mind, photographic memory. At 34, she'd designed some of Manhattan's most iconic buildings. She was methodical, precise, the kind of woman who didn't forget things, until she married Richard Blackwell. Venture capitalist, billionaire, charming, attentive, the kind of man who remembered her coffee order, who sent flowers to her office, who told her she was the smartest woman he'd ever met, but 6 months into their marriage, small things started happening. She'd forget conversations, misplace her keys in strange places, inside the freezer, under couch cushions. She'd send emails she had no memory of writing. Richard was always there, patient, concerned. "Maybe you're working too hard, darling, you've been under so much stress, have you thought about seeing someone?" So she did. Dr. Patricia Hamilton, Manhattan's top neuropsychologist. The diagnosis, early onset dementia, possibly Alzheimer's. At 34, Elisa's world collapsed, her career, her identity, her entire sense of self, everything she knew about herself, evaporating. But here's what Elise didn't know: Richard had been planning this for 18 months, every forgotten conversation. He'd never had it with her, every misplaced item. He moved them himself, every email she didn't remember. He'd sent them from her computer while she slept, the security footage. Digitally altered, even the doctor, Dr. Hamilton, was on his payroll. Why? Because Elise was worth $52 million, an inheritance from her late father's tech empire, and she'd refused to sign a prenup. Richard's plan was elegant, methodical, devastating: convince her she was losing her mind. Get her declared mentally incompetent. Gain control of her assets, then, discard her into a memory care facility. By the time anyone realized the truth, he'd have everything. Her money, her properties, her legacy, and she'd be too sick to fight back. This is a story about gaslighting, not the casual kind, the calculated kind. The kind that uses technology, money, and manipulation to systematically destroy someone's grip on reality. This is a story about how a brilliant woman almost lost everything, including her sanity, because the man she loved had turned her mind into a weapon against herself. The question isn't whether she'll discover the truth, it's whether she'll discover it in time. Before she signs the conservatorship papers, before she's committed, before Richard Blackwell takes everything. This is a story of the CEO who convinced his wife she was insane, a dark psychology case study in gaslighting. Let's begin. Before we dive into Elisa's story, let me explain what gaslighting actually is, because this term gets thrown around a lot, but true gaslighting is far more sinister than most people realize. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where the abuser makes the victim question their own memory, perception, and sanity. It's named after a 1944 film called Gaslight, where a husband dims the gaslights in their home and then denies they're flickering, making his wife think she's hallucinating. But modern gaslighting? It's evolved. It uses technology, financial systems, medical professionals, legal structures. And it follows a pattern. Stage 1, idealization: the abuser builds trust and dependency. Stage 2, reality distortion: small incidents that make the victim doubt themselves. Stage 3, isolation: cutting off external validation sources. Stage 4, dependence: the victim relies entirely on the abuser's version of reality. Stage 5, exploitation: the abuser uses the manufactured, mental illness, for gain. Richard Blackwell executed all 5 stages perfectly. Let me show you how. Elise met Richard at the MoMA Gala. She was there celebrating her firm's award for the Hudson Tower project, a 40-story building that had been her obsession for 2 years. He approached her at the champagne table. "Elise Morrison," he said, extending his hand, "I've been wanting to meet you since I saw the Hudson Tower renderings. That cantilevered structure on the 32nd floor. Brilliant." She was surprised. Most people at these events knew her face from magazines but had no idea about the actual architecture. Richard was different. He knew the details, asked intelligent questions, actually listened to her answers. By the end of the night, she'd given him her card. By the end of the week, they'd had 3 dinners, and by the end of the month, she was in love. Richard was everything she'd thought didn't exist: brilliant, successful, but genuinely interested in her success. He came to her project presentations, sent her articles about innovative architecture, never once made her feel like her career was a threat to his ego. "You're going to change Manhattan's skyline," he'd whisper, "and I just get to watch you do it." 6 months in, he proposed. Private rooftop dinner overlooking the city. The ring was perfect, Art Deco sapphire. Because he remembered she'd mentioned hating traditional diamonds. "Marry me," he said, "let me spend the rest of my life supporting your dreams." She said yes immediately. The wedding was small, intimate, perfect. Her father had died 2 years earlier, leaving her his tech company stocks and real estate portfolio, worth about $52 million. Richard insisted he didn't want a prenup. "I'm not marrying you for money, Elise, I have my own. I'm marrying you because you're the most extraordinary woman I've ever met." She loved him for that. God, she loved him for that. The first 3 months of marriage were blissful. Richard worked from home 2 days a week just to have lunch with her. He'd leave little notes in her briefcase. He bought her a studio space in their penthouse so she could sketch without interruption. "I want you to have everything you need to be brilliant," he'd say. She'd never been happier. That's when the incident started. It began with small things. A Tuesday morning, Richard mentioned over coffee, "Don't forget, we're having dinner with the Caldwells tonight. You promised Catherine you'd be there." Elise frowned. "I don't remember making plans." "Really?" Richard looked surprised. "You talked to her last week, set the whole thing up." I don't think so." He pulled out his phone, showed her a text thread from her number confirming dinner plans. Elise stared at the messages. They were from her phone, but she had no memory of sending them. "Are you feeling okay?" Richard asked gently. "I'm fine, just maybe I forgot, work's been intense." "You've been pushing yourself too hard," he said, kissing her forehead. "Maybe cut back a little." She laughed it off, but it happened again the following week. She couldn't find her car keys, searched everywhere. Richard found them in the freezer. "Elise, why are your keys in the freezer?" "I didn't put them there." "Then how did they get there?" She had no answer. A week later, her assistant mentioned an email Elise had sent at 3 a.m., canceling an important client meeting. Elise checked her sent folder. There it was, sent from her computer, her email signature, her writing style, but she'd been asleep at 3 a.m., hadn't she? "Maybe you sent it and forgot," her assistant suggested carefully. "You've seemed distracted lately." That word distracted started following her. More incidents piled up. She'd forget entire conversations with colleagues, find her belongings in bizarre places, discover appointments on her calendar she didn't remember making, send emails and texts with no recollection, and Richard was always there. Never angry, never frustrated, just concerned. "Darling, I'm worried about you. Maybe you should see someone. This isn't normal." After 2 months of incidents, Elise agreed something was wrong, terribly wrong. "Let's pause here and talk about what Richard is actually doing. This is manufactured reality distortion. Here are the tactics he's using. 1. Digital manipulation. Richard has access to Elise's laptop, phone, and email accounts. While she sleeps, he sends emails from her account, creates calendar appointments, texts people confirming plans she never made. Alters security footage using basic video editing software. 2. Physical staging. He moves her belongings to strange locations. The freezer keys, he put them there. The misplaced documents, it was him, all of it designed to make her doubt her memory. 3. Confirmation bias exploitation. Once Elise starts believing she's forgetting things, her brain begins to gaslight itself. She'll second-guess real memories because she's lost trust in her own mind. 4. External validation removal. Richard is slowly isolating her, making her seem unreliable to colleagues and friends. Soon, no one will believe her version of events. 5. The medical authority trap. This is the genius move. He's going to use a doctor to confirm her mental illness. Once a medical professional validates his narrative, Elise's reality is fully destroyed, and that doctor, Dr. Patricia Hamilton. She's about to become Richard's most valuable asset. Let's continue. Dr. Patricia Hamilton's office was on Park Avenue, expensive art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Richard had recommended her personally. She's the best neuropsychologist in the city, he'd said. If anyone can help, it's her. The first session was 3 hours long: memory tests, cognitive assessments, family history questions. Elise answered everything honestly. Yes, her mother had died of early-onset Alzheimer's at 56, yes, she'd been experiencing memory lapses, yes, she sometimes felt disconnected from her own actions. Dr. Hamilton listened carefully, taking notes. I'd like to run some additional tests, she said, cognitive function scans, blood work. We need to rule out physiological causes, Elise agreed. Over the next month, she underwent extensive testing, MRIs, blood panels, neurological exams. Richard came to every appointment, held her hand in waiting rooms, reassured her it would be okay. Whatever this is, we'll handle it together, he'd say. She believed him. Finally, the results appointment arrived. Elise sat across from Dr. Hamilton, Richard beside her. The doctor's expression was grave. Elise, I'm afraid the tests confirm my initial concern. You're showing early markers of dementia, likely Alzheimer's, given your family history and the progression of symptoms. I'd estimate you're in the early stages. The room tilted. I'm 34, Elise whispered. Early-onset Alzheimer's can begin in the 30s, it's rare, but with your genetic predisposition. How long? Richard asked quietly. It's hard to say, the progression varies, but Elise, you need to start planning now. Legal arrangements, medical directives. You'll need someone to help manage your affairs as the disease progresses. Elise couldn't breathe, her career, her independence, her mind, all of it, dying. Richard squeezed her hand. I'll take care of everything, he said softly. You don't have to worry. What Elise didn't know. Dr. Hamilton wasn't just any neuropsychologist. She was Richard's former colleague from his days in medical device investing. He'd helped her secure funding for her practice 8 years ago. She owed him. 3 months before Elise's first appointment, Richard had approached Dr. Hamilton with a proposal. Diagnose his wife with early-onset dementia, provide documentation supporting cognitive decline, testify in court if necessary for a conservatorship hearing, in exchange, $500,000. Paid through an offshore consulting fee. Dr. Hamilton had hesitated, but Richard knew her weaknesses: gambling debts, a malpractice lawsuit she'd settled quietly, an affair with a former patient that could destroy her license if exposed. He didn't threaten, he didn't need to. He just made it clear, helping him was the safest option. So Dr. Hamilton ran real tests, but interpreted them creatively. Normal brain scans became subtle abnormalities, typical stress markers became early degeneration. Standard cognitive variation became concerning decline. The medical system became Richard's weapon. He said one evening, they were in the penthouse living room, Manhattan glittered below. Dr. Hamilton says your condition will progress, you need to make decisions now, while you still can. Elise felt numb. She'd spent the last week in a fog of grief and terror. What kind of decisions? Medical power of attorney, financial conservatorship. Someone needs to be able to make decisions when you can't anymore. I don't want to think about this, I know, darling, but we have to. He took her hands. Let me carry this burden, let me protect you. I've already spoken to my attorneys, they've prepared the paperwork, all you need to do is sign. Something in Elise resisted, some deep, primal instinct screamed, don't sign, don't give up control, but she was so tired, so scared. And Richard had been so perfect through all of this. "Okay," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "I'll take care of everything, I promise." Over the next month, Elise signed document after document. Medical power of attorney, granting Richard complete control over her healthcare decisions. Durable power of attorney, giving him control over her finances. Trust modification, making him trustee of her inheritance trust. Advance directive, authorizing him to place her in memory care if necessary. Richard's lawyers assured her everything was standard, just protecting your assets and ensuring you get proper care, they said. Q&D. Elise signed. What choice did she have? Then came the isolation, subtle, gradual, devastating. Richard began suggesting she cut back at work. You don't want to make mistakes on a project, think of the liability. So she took a leave of absence. He suggested limiting social events. You've been getting confused around people, it's less stressful to stay home. So she stopped seeing friends. He recommended she let him handle the finances. Numbers are getting harder for you, let me manage the accounts. So she gave him all the passwords. Within 3 months, Elise's world had contracted to just Richard. Her friends stopped calling. Richard told them she needed space. Her colleagues moved on to other projects. Her access to her own bank accounts was simplified through Richard's management. She was completely dependent and she didn't even realize she'd been trapped. Even if they suspect something's wrong, they have no support system to confirm their suspicions, no financial resources to investigate, no legal standing to challenge the arrangements, no credibility, they're mentally ill. This is why gaslighting is so dangerous. It's not just emotional abuse, it's a systematic dismantling of someone's autonomy, leaving them completely powerless. Richard has executed this perfectly, but he made one mistake. He underestimated Elise's intelligence, because even through the fog of manipulation, some part of her brilliant mind knew something is very wrong. The security footage was the beginning of the end for Richard. It was a Tuesday night. Richard was at a business dinner. Elise couldn't sleep. She'd been having nightmares, vague, disturbing dreams where she was screaming but no sound came out. She went downstairs for water, and that's when she saw it, the security camera in the corner of the kitchen. Richard had installed them for safety after she started forgetting to lock doors. Something about the camera nagged at her. She opened her laptop, accessed the security system, scrolled back through footage, and found the clip from last week. The one showing her drinking wine at 2:47 a.m. Elise watched it 3 times. Something was wrong, the movements weren't quite right. The way she walked, the angle of her head, it looked like her, but it didn't move like her. She designed buildings for 15 years, she understood spatial relationships, body mechanics, proportion, and this wasn't right. She downloaded the clip, opened it in video editing software she'd used for architectural presentations, and started analyzing frame by frame. That's when she saw it, a glitch at the 0.47-second mark, a pixel distortion around her left shoulder. The kind of artifact that appears in digitally manipulated video. Someone had edited this footage, someone had superimposed her image, someone had manufactured evidence that she was losing her mind. Elise's hands shook as the implications crashed over her. None of this is real, the memory lapses, the misplaced items, the emails, someone is doing this to me. And there was only one person with the access, the motive, and the technical knowledge to pull it off, Richard. For the first time in months, Elise's mind felt clear, the fog lifted, the self-doubt evaporated. She wasn't crazy, she was being made to seem crazy, but she had to be smart. If she confronted Richard now, he'd deny everything, call it paranoia. More evidence of her condition. She needed proof, real, undeniable proof. That night, after Richard fell asleep, Elise started her investigation. She checked her email account, the real one, not the one Richard helped her manage. Found dozens of sent messages she'd never written, but all sent between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., when she was always asleep. She checked her phone logs, calls made from her number while her phone was charging on Richard's nightstand. She reviewed her calendar, appointments created from her account, but the IP address showed they originated from Richard's laptop. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Richard had been systematically manipulating her digital life for months, but why? Then she remembered, the legal documents, the power of attorney, the trust modifications. She pulled out the paperwork Richard's lawyers had prepared, read through it carefully, and found the clause buried on page 47 of the trust modification, in the event the grantor is deemed mentally incapacitated. The trustee shall have full discretionary authority over all trust assets, including the right to transfer, sell, or otherwise dispose of said assets without restriction or oversight. Translation: if she was declared mentally incompetent, Richard could take everything, and the conservatorship papers she'd signed authorized him to have her committed to a memory care facility at his discretion. He was going to steal her inheritance. Then lock her away where she couldn't fight back. Elise spent the next week gathering evidence. Downloaded all manipulated security footage, with visible editing artifacts. Screenshotted emails with timestamps and IP addresses. Recorded the locations where her misplaced items were found, all places she'd never put them. Documented the pattern of incidents, always when Richard was alone in the apartment. Researched Dr. Hamilton's connection to Richard, found the old business partnership. She also did something brilliant. She started playing along, acted confused, forgetful, dependent, let Richard think his plan was working perfectly. Meanwhile, she contacted someone Richard had overlooked. Her father's estate attorney, Marcus Chen. Marcus had known Elise since she was 16, had watched her build her career, knew exactly how sharp her mind was. When Elise showed him the evidence, his face went pale. "This is criminal," he said quietly. "Elder abuse statutes apply to financial exploitation even if you're not elderly. And if we can prove the doctor was complicit." "I need to get out," Elise said, "but if I just leave, he'll freeze my accounts, use the power of attorney to claim I'm having an episode." "Then we don't just get you out," Marcus said, "we burn his entire operation to the ground." They planned it perfectly. Marcus contacted the Manhattan District Attorney's office, showed them the evidence. Within 48 hours, they had a forensic digital analyst confirming the video manipulation. Bank records showing Richard's payment to Dr. Hamilton, testimony from Elisa's colleagues confirming she'd never shown signs of cognitive decline, a warrant to search Richard's computers. The trap was set. On a Thursday evening, Elise sat in the penthouse living room, waiting. Richard came home at 7. "How are you feeling, darling?" he asked, kissing her cheek. Confused, she said softly, playing the role, "I can't find my phone again." "Oh, Elise," concern flooded his face, "where did you last have it?" "I don't remember." "Okay, don't worry, we'll find it." He pulled out his own phone. "Actually, I'm glad you brought this up. I've been talking to Dr. Hamilton. She thinks it might be time to consider more structured care." "What does that mean?" "A facility, just temporarily, somewhere you can be monitored, safe." There it was, the endgame. When Elise asked, "I've made arrangements for next week, I know it's hard to hear, but..." The doorbell rang. Richard frowned. "Are you expecting someone?" "No." He opened the door. Two NYPD detectives, Marcus Chen, and behind them, a forensic computer specialist carrying hard drives. "Richard Blackwell," the detective said. "Yes. You're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and identity theft." Richard's face went white. "What? This is insane, Elise, tell them." Elise stood up, met his eyes, and for the first time in months, she didn't look confused, she looked furious. "I know everything, Richard, the video editing, the manipulated emails, the payments to Dr. Hamilton, all of it. You're not well, this is paranoia. I'm an architect, Richard, I understand structural integrity, and your plan had a very weak foundation." The detective moved forward with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." As they led Richard away, he locked eyes with Elise one last time. The mask had dropped. No more concern, no more love, just rage, pure, entitled rage. "You were supposed to be easy," he hissed, "just another rich, broken woman." Elise smiled coldly. "I was never broken, you just convinced me I was." "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The door closed. Richard Blackwell was gone. The investigation uncovered everything. Richard had done this before, twice, 2 previous marriages to wealthy women, both ended in conservatorship, both women declared mentally incompetent. Both fortunes transferred to Richard through legal manipulation. One woman was still in a memory care facility, believing she had Alzheimer's, but she didn't. She'd been gaslit for 7 years. The other had died, officially of complications from dementia, but now authorities were re-examining that case. Dr. Hamilton flipped immediately, provided testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. Detailed how Richard had recruited her, paid her, threatened her into compliance. The medical board revoked her license. She'd never practice again. Richard went to trial 8 months later. The evidence was overwhelming: forensic proof of digital manipulation, financial records of payments to co-conspirators. Testimony from 2 other victims, documentation of the systematic isolation tactics. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts, 15 to 25 years. Elise sat in the courtroom as the verdict was read, felt nothing, no satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness. He'd stolen 18 months of her life, made her doubt her own mind, taken her career, her confidence, her sense of self, and for what? Money he didn't even need, control he didn't deserve. The cruelty of it hollowed her out. Elisa's case is extreme, but the tactics Richard used are not uncommon. Let's break down the gaslighting framework. The setup: establish trust and dependency, gain access to victims' digital and physical life. Create plausible backstory for mental decline, family history, stress, manufacture evidence of memory loss, use technology to alter reality, recruit authority figures, doctors, lawyers, to validate the narrative. Isolate the victim from outside perspectives, secure legal control before victim realizes what's happening. The exploitation: transfer assets, institutionalize victim, maintain control through legal authority. 3 years later, Elise stands on the observation deck of the Morrison Tower, 48 stories of glass and steel, cantilevered sections defying gravity. Her comeback project: after Richard's conviction, she'd taken a year off, therapy. Rest, rebuilding. Slowly remembering who she was before him, the brilliant architect, the sharp mind, the woman who didn't need validation from anyone. It took time. Some days she still caught herself second-guessing her own memories. The gaslighting had left scars. But she was healing. She'd also become an advocate, spoke at conferences about financial abuse, trained lawyers on recognizing gaslighting tactics, helped other victims document their cases, turned her nightmare into purpose. The woman from Richard's first marriage, the one still in the memory care facility, Elise got her out, hired attorneys, proved she'd been gaslit, helped her reclaim her life. She was 62 years old and just now remembering who she'd been before Richard convinced her she was dying. They met for coffee sometimes, compared notes, laughed about their survival. Elisa's phone buzzed, a text from Marcus Chen: the DA just called, Richard's parole hearing was denied, he'll serve the full sentence, 25 years. He'd be 73 when he got out, too old to run the same con. Elise pocketed her phone, looked out over Manhattan, the city she'd helped build, the skyline she'd changed. Richard had tried to take everything, her money, her mind, her future, but he'd failed, because the thing about gaslighting is this: it only works if you believe the lie, and Elise Morrison had stopped believing. She trusted herself, fought back. And now she was free. If you're watching this and something feels familiar, if you've questioned your own memory lately, if someone in your life keeps telling you you're not yourself, if you feel like you're going crazy, you're not, you're being manipulated. Gaslighting is real, it's psychological abuse, and it can happen to anyone no matter how smart, successful, or strong you are. Elise was a brilliant architect with a photographic memory, and she almost lost everything, not because she was weak, but because Richard was calculating. The tactics he used: digital manipulation, medical fraud, legal coercion, they're all real, they're happening to people right now, maybe even you. So here's what I want you to do: if any part of this story resonated with you, document everything. Start a private journal, save emails, record your own memories before someone else rewrites them. Trust yourself, your instincts exist for a reason. Reach out. Tell someone you trust what's happening, don't stay silent, and if you're not sure whether you're being gaslit, ask yourself this: would the person who loves you systematically destroy your sense of reality? If the answer is yes, or even maybe get help, you deserve better, you deserve the truth, you deserve to trust your own mind. 3 questions for the comments. 1. Have you ever experienced gaslighting? What helped you realize what was happening? 2. What red flag from this story stood out most to you? 3. What manipulation tactic should I decode next? Your story matters, share it below, and if this video helped you recognize something in your own life, please share it, you might save someone. Until next time, trust yourself, document everything, and never let anyone convince you that your reality isn't real. This has been Toxic Love Decoded. I'll see you in the next one.